Welcome to the module number 2, lesson number 2, which is inheritance. In this lesson, we are going to learn the topics about introduction to the inheritance concept, syntaxes for the inheritance, advantages of using inheritance, example or sample code for the usage of inheritance, constructor inheritance and super keyword, examples of constructor inheritance, inheritance and private members, inheritance and nested classes, inheritance and final classes, types of inheritance, and the sample code showing different types of inheritance. Let us look at the basic introduction to the inheritance concept. Different kinds of objects often have a certain amount in common with each other, like car, truck, motorcycle. These are all vehicles, yet each also defines additional features that make them different from the other one. In object-oriented programming, classes are allowed to inherit commonly used state and behavior from the other classes. Inheritance is the process where one classes acquire the properties, which are the methods and fields of the other class. Inheritance enables us to derive more specific categories from more generic ones. The more specific category is a kind of the more generic category. The idea of inheritance is simple but powerful. Say we want to create a new class and there is already a class that includes some of the code that we want. Then we can derive our new class from this existing class. In doing this, we can reuse the fields and methods of the existing class without having to write them again by ourselves. The class which inherits the properties of the other class is called the subclass, also called derived class or the child class, and the class whose properties are inherited is called the superclass, or also called the base class or parent class. A subclass will inherit all the members, fields or variables, methods and nested classes from its superclass. Constructors are not members, so they are not inherited by the subclasses. But the constructor of the superclass can be invoked from the subclass. With the use of inheritance, the information is made manageable in a hierarchical order. Let us look at the importance of the extends keyword. Extends is the keyword used to inherit the properties of a class. Here is the syntax of the extends keyword. Syntax: class and the superclass name followed by the details of the class, and then we write the subclass into which we want to inherit the superclass. So class space subclass name extends, then the superclass name followed by the class declaration and details of the subclass. Here is a simple example for the syntax: class phone followed by the declaration and details of the phone class. Then we write class camera phone extends phone followed by the details of the camera phone class. We usually refer inheritance in the concept of is a relationship. So inheritance represents is a relationship. When we extend an object, we are really saying that the new object is a type of the object that we are extending. In the above example, where we use the extends keyword, we are mentioning that camera phone is a phone type of object. Let us look at the advantages of inheritance concept. It takes less time for application development if you are using inheritance concept. Inheritance takes less memory for the application under development. Application execution time will also decrease. Performance of the application will also enhance or improve. The redundancy or the repetition of code is reduced or minimized so that we get the consistent results and we will have less storage cost. Application code becomes more maintainable. Less modifications will be required in the future. Let us look at some sample code or a basic example of using the inheritance concept. In the below example, we can observe there are two classes, namely calculation and myCalculation. Using the extend keywords, the myCalculation class inherits the methods addition and subtraction of the calculation class. Class calculation open with a flower brace. We are creating an integer instance variable z Then we have the public void addition method, in which I have two parameters, int x, int y, and I am adding those two values and I am assigning that value to z variable, which is the instance variable. Then I am printing the value of the sum of the two given numbers in the print statement. Followed by I have the next method, public void subtraction, again into which I am taking two local variables, int x, int y. I am assigning the value of x minus y into the instance variable z, and I am printing that instance variable using the sentence the difference between the given numbers is, and I am printing the instance variable z. Then I have the public class my calculation, which is extending the calculation class in which we wrote all this code, where I am writing the public void multiplication method, in which I have two parameters, int x, int y as the local variables, where again I am multiplying those two variables and I am assigning the value to the z variable. In the next statement I am printing the product of those two numbers, or the multiplication value of those two numbers with the statement. Finally, I have the public static void main in the my calculation class, in which I am assigning the value for a and b variables, and I am creating an object for the my calculation class. Remember, not for the calculation class, for the my calculation class. My calculation space demo equals to new my calculation. I am calling the addition, subtraction and multiplication methods for the demo object belonging to the my calculation class. So I am able to call the methods of calculation class because the my calculation class is inherited from the calculation class. Let us look at how the entire process will go on when you inherit the my calculation class from the calculation class. In the given program, when an object of the my calculation class is created, a copy of the contents of the superclass, which is the calculation class, will be made into the my calculation class. When using the object of the subclass, you can access the members of the superclass. It will be something like you have the variables and methods of the calculation class as a subset of the my calculation class object. The next concept is constructor inheritance and the super keyword. A subclass inherits all the members, which are the variables, methods, nested classes and all, from its superclass. Constructors are not the members, so they are not inherited by the subclasses. Unless they are the implicit constructors, they are not inherited. The constructor of the superclass can be invoked from the subclass using the super keyword. Let's look at the first example. Example 1. In this example, we don't need to call the constructor A in class B with the super keyword because it gets inherited and executes when an object for the class B is created. Class A, in which we have the public A as the constructor, and I am printing new A from the public A constructor. I have the class B which extends class A, and I have the constructor B in which I am printing new B statement. And now I have the public class test constructors in which I have the public static void main where I am creating the object for the class B. B small b equals to new B. Here constructor A also gets called along with the constructor B because we have the constructor of class A which is inherited to B as the implicit constructor. Now we have the next example. In this example, we have to call the constructor A in the class B with super keyword explicitly because it does not get inherited when an object for the class B is created. If we don't call the constructor explicitly using the super keyword, it will generate an error. I have the class A in which I have the constructor public A which takes a parameter string A, and I am printing that string A in the next line of the constructor. Then I have the class B which is extending class A, and I have a constructor public B in which I am calling the constructor A using super, and I am passing a value new A. We are calling the super keyword for the constructor of the class A because class A's constructor public A is not an implicit constructor, and as we know, the implicit constructors are the only ones which will get inherited into the next class or the subclass, but not the explicit constructors. So we specifically have to call the explicit constructor when you don't have an implicit constructor in the parent class. The next concept that we're going to discuss is inheritance and private members. Let us look whether private members are affected when you inherit them into any other class. A subclass does not inherit the private members of its parent class. However, if the superclass has public or protected methods for accessing these private variables or fields, then those methods can be used by the subclass. Let us look at example. We have a class A in which I have a private variable, private int x equals to 20, and I have a private method, private void xyz, in which I am printing xyz method as a statement. I have another method which is a public method, public void xyz2, in which I am printing the value of x is, and I am printing the x variable which is a private variable. Remember, I am using the private variable inside the public method xyz2. Now I am inheriting class A into class B. So class B extends class A, and in the class B I am writing public void ABC method, just printing the statement new B. After that I have the public class first, where I am writing the public static void main, in which I am creating the instance for the class B. B is equal to new B, and I am calling two methods, b.xyz2 and b.xyz. However, when I call the xyz2 method, it will be able to execute because we are using private variable, but the xyz2 method is a public method. But we cannot call the xyz method in the public static void main because it is a private method and we cannot use private method outside the class. Also because the private variables and methods of class A are not inherited into the class B. The next concept that we are going to look at is inheritance and nested classes. How are nested classes going to behave when you try to inherit them into another class? The Java inheritance rules apply to the nested classes also. Nested classes which are declared private are not inherited. Nested classes with the default or the package access modifier are only accessible to the subclasses if the subclass is also located in the same package. Nested classes with the protected or public access modifier are always inherited by the subclasses. Let us look at an example. Class myClass contains a nested class called class myNestedClass. Now I am trying to access this one in the public class mySubclass extends myClass. I have a public static void main in which I am creating an object for the mySubclass. Subclass object is equal to new mySubclass, and I am going to create an object for the myNestedClass using myNestedClass nested is equal to subclass dot new myNestedClass. Here we are able to observe that we are able to access the default nested class inside a default class called the myClass, and we have also seen how to use the nested class, the syntax, by creating an object for the class and then accessing the class object for creating the object for the nested class. Let us now go through the concept called inheritance and final classes. What is a final class? You might declare a class that should not be extended, for instance, for security reasons. In Java, we use the final keyword to prevent some classes from being extended. Final base classes are not reusable or not inheritable at all. If you do not want to give the features of a base class to the derived class, then the definition of the base class must be preceded by the final keyword. In such cases, prefix a class header with final, example, final class password. Given this declaration, the compiler will report an error if someone attempts to extend the password class. Example, final class A, and declare the members and methods inside the declaration. Then try to extend class B extends A and try to execute. This will return an error as final classes cannot be inherited at all. Now the next concept is the types of inheritance. What are the different types of inheritance we have? Java does not support multiple inheritance. This means that a class cannot extend more than one class. Therefore, the following is illegal: public class extends animal, comma, mammal. However, a class can implement one or more interfaces. This has made Java get rid of the impossibility of multiple inheritance. Let us look at the diagrams which show the types of inheritance. We have four types of inheritance. The first one is single inheritance, in which one class will inherit one another class. Example is class A is inherited by class B. We have the next type as multi-level inheritance, in which one class is inherited into the next class. The next class is inherited into one more class. Here the diagram shows class A is inherited into the class B and class B is inherited into class C. Because these are at different levels, like a building, we call this as a multi-level inheritance. We have three levels in the shown picture. The next one is hierarchical inheritance. In this, one class is inherited into more than one class. Here, class A is inherited into class B and class A is also inherited into class C. The final one is multiple inheritance, in which one class will inherit more than one class. Here the picture shows class B is inheriting class A and class C. Multiple inheritance, as we already discussed, is not possible in Java. Let us look at the examples of types of inheritance we just discussed in diagrams through the code examples. Example of single inheritance: write class A and write the members and methods with the declarations. Then we have class B extends class A. Inside the class B, we will write our members and methods of the class B. The example for multi-level inheritance: we have a class A in which we write the members and methods with the declaration. Then class B extends class A, and finally class C extends class B. Then the example for hierarchical inheritance: class A is declared with the members and methods, then class B extends A, and then class C extends A. Final example for multiple inheritance, which is not allowed in Java: class A is declared, class B is declared, class C extends A, B.